In 2025, scams don't just live in shady emails anymore. They're hiding in everyday purchases, in your favorite apps, and even in your kitchen. What makes them harder to spot is that they're completely legal. You'd be surprised how many of these rip-offs feel normal until you look closer. Today, we're breaking down 20 of the biggest so-called everyday essentials that quietly drain your money. For each one, I'll show you the simple switches that can save hundreds a year. And quick question, have you ever realized too late that something you bought was a total rip-off? Tell me in the comments. Let's start with one that millions of people buy without hesitation: bottled water. Picture this: you step into a store on a warm day, grab a plastic bottle of water, and hand over a couple of dollars without hesitation. What most people don't realize is that the same amount from your kitchen tap costs only a tiny fraction of that price. Water itself is not scarce or expensive. It's one of the most accessible resources we have. Yet bottled water has turned into a billion-dollar business. By making ordinary tap water feel like a premium product we should gladly overpay for. The labels with snowy peaks and crystal blue streams suggest purity that's rare and untouched, but the truth is far less glamorous. According to industry research, many of the biggest bottled water brands source their product from municipal tap systems, not from mountain springs. Companies lightly filter and repackage ordinary city water, then sell it at markups that can run hundreds of times higher than the cost of producing it. Most of what people are buying isn't an elevated product. It's an illusion created through design, advertising, and carefully chosen language. What truly sells bottled water is convenience. A case might cost $10 or more, which is about what an entire household might spend for a month's worth of tap water. But the shape of the bottle, the logo, and even the perception of carrying a healthier option makes it feel necessary. Break it down further. If someone buys a bottle a day, the annual cost approaches what could otherwise cover groceries, utilities, or part of a vacation. Spread the habit over a couple of years, and the totals reach into the hundreds of dollars simply for something already available at home. The message isn't only about hydration, it's lifestyle branding. Ads tell us that drinking bottled water signals fitness, success, or sophistication, but that image comes with two hidden costs. First, you're paying an outsized price for a basic utility. Second, the disposable bottles pile up, and billions of them every year end up in landfills or oceans. Bottled water's real footprint is both financial and environmental, even though it's marketed as the clean, modern choice. Avoiding this trap doesn't mean giving up convenience altogether. A stainless steel or BPA-free reusable bottle paired with a simple home filter delivers the same quality and portability without waste. That adjustment alone can save substantial amounts over time while cutting down on single-use plastics. Once you see bottled water for what it is, tap water resold at luxury pricing, the decision to walk past it on the shelf becomes much easier. And bottled water isn't the only case where something routine gets spun into a must-buy. The same sales tactics that dress up necessity as luxury also appear at checkout counters in ways designed to feel protective rather than wasteful. Extended warranties on electronics. You've probably run into this one before. You're about to pay for a new $800 laptop or phone when the salesperson interrupts with, "Do you want extra protection? For just $300 more, you'll be covered for years." It's framed as insurance for your purchase, but in reality, the math often works against you. Many extended warranties are priced as much as, or even more than, the cost of the typical repairs they claim to cover. Think about the most common issues people face with their devices: cracked screens, battery swaps, the occasional charging port. In many cases, those repairs cost less than the warranty itself. The real sales tactic isn't logic, it's emotion. Stores lean on fear, the idea that your device could suddenly die, leaving you wishing you had agreed to that extra layer of protection. But modern electronics are designed to be fairly reliable, and most people upgrade long before major failures ever happen. Paying hundreds up front, just in case, usually leaves you with paperwork instead of real value. The sales script often leans on the phrase peace of mind. But when you unpack that, it's really peace of mind you already have. Manufacturer warranties already cover defects for at least the first year or two. On top of that, many credit cards automatically extend manufacturer coverage at no extra charge. In other words, a free safety net may already be built into your purchase. But no one at the counter is going to remind you of that while they're pushing a warranty. Before ever agreeing to one, it's worth checking both the manufacturer's guarantee and the protection policies tied to your credit card. Extended warranties thrive because we've been conditioned to feel that skipping them is risky or careless. The truth is that in most cases, it's simply spending twice for the same reassurance. You've already paid for the device, and then you're asked to pay again to guard against a future that might never arrive. Unless you can clearly show that the warranty saves money compared to expected repair costs, the better move is to decline the upsell, hold onto your cash, and only pay for fixes if they're actually needed. What feels like a cautious choice in the store is often just another way to nudge your total higher at the register. Once you start noticing how these offers are framed, you'll see the same pattern pop up in other places too, especially where small fears are turned into quick sales. And in some industries, that tactic shows up not with gadgets, but with services you rely on to keep bigger investments running. Quick oil change upsells. Walk into a quick oil change shop and the script never changes. You're welcomed with a smile, the hood pops open, and almost immediately someone leans over with a list of urgent upgrades. Instead of just changing your oil, they suggest premium synthetic blends, engine flushes, or new filters. Services that often sound life-saving, but aren't actually required for most cars. The pitch frames standard upkeep as a looming disaster, even though your owner's manual already spells out exactly what your vehicle needs. The reason is simple. These shops don't make much money off the basic oil change. The low advertised price is bait, and once you're in the bay, the real profit comes from upsells. A worker might highlight that high-mileage formula or super-preserving synthetic oil, adding $30 to $100 to the bill. Add in offers for wiper blades, air filters, coolant flushes, or transmission services, and what started as a $40 job can balloon into $200 before you've left the lot. What's framed as preventive care is often just padding for the receipt. The sales strategy works because fear sells. A line like "your engine could suffer permanent damage" makes most drivers think twice about saying no. Who wants to risk being the person who declined a recommendation only to face a breakdown later? But in reality, many of those extras, like engine flushes, aren't even listed in most manufacturer maintenance schedules. Automakers know exactly how long components last under normal use, and their manuals rarely match the dire warnings service advisors are trained to deliver. The industry pulls in billions from this system. Staff are trained as salespeople with scripts, not technicians giving neutral advice. Even when drivers refuse, the suggestion plants doubt for next time, which keeps the cycle going. Over time, customers can start believing constant extra maintenance is standard, even though modern engines are built to run reliably for years without those add-ons. A basic oil change with the right fluid is usually all that's required until the next interval. There is a straightforward way to protect yourself. Bring your manual with you. When the upsell comes, point to the schedule and say, "Only what's listed here, nothing extra." That short sentence cuts through most of the pressure. Another option is to use a trusted local mechanic rather than a quick change chain. Independent shops often rely more on repeat customers than on pushing unneeded services, so their recommendations usually stick closer to the manufacturer guideline. At the end of the day, the choice is between paying for what your car truly needs or paying for your own fear of saying no. Following the manual keeps your vehicle safe and your wallet intact. And these inflated add-on charges aren't just found under the hood. Many show up in the everyday products we grab when we're short on time or caught unprepared. Travel-size products. Ever been stuck at the airport, realized you forgot your toothpaste, and ended up paying $4 for a tube barely big enough for 2 brushes? That tiny, forgettable purchase ends up costing many times more per ounce than the full-size version sitting on your bathroom counter at home. It doesn't feel like much in the moment, but that rushed decision is one of the clearest examples of how convenience quietly turns into profit at your expense. By 2025, travel-sized products have become a reliable money spinner for retailers. Mini shampoos, pocket deodorants, and half-ounce lotions regularly sell for extreme markups compared to their standard cousins. Nothing in those little bottles is unique. They hold the same formulas sold by the quart. What changes is the packaging. Shrink the container, slap on words like "on the go" or "travel ready," and suddenly you're paying a premium to buy less. Trap works because of timing. Airports and convenience stops know you have limited choices and limited patience. Security rules restrict how much liquid you can carry, and if you forgot to pack a small container, you're forced to buy whatever's stocked in front of you. Retailers take full advantage by pricing for urgency rather than fairness, and it works. Shoppers under pressure rarely stop to calculate price per ounce. That tiny bottle by the terminal kiosk isn't cheap because it doesn't have to be. The cost difference is harsh once you break it down. A full-size shampoo might run $10 for months of use, which works out to just cents per ounce. Compare that with a travel edition, selling for $4 or $5 for a few ounces, and you're suddenly paying well over $1 per unit. And what are you buying? Not better soap, not a luxury formula, just smaller packaging that makes the same product look indispensable in a pinch. To be clear, no one's saying skip hygiene on a trip. The smarter solution is to invest once in a set of reusable travel bottles and top them off from your existing supply at home. A basic refillable kit costs less than 2 airport samples and will last for years of trips. Add to that the fact that many hotels now provide complimentary toiletries, and the case for buying overpriced miniatures gets even weaker. You can have the portability without paying for it every single time. What these products really highlight is how packaging can transform an ordinary household item into a premium-priced necessity. That same marketing playbook shows up elsewhere too, especially in categories where a small, repeating item becomes a routine expense people rarely question. Razor blade cartridges. Walk into any drugstore in 2025 and you'll still see small packs of razor cartridges locked behind glass with price tags that defy logic. The cost of producing one of those steel strips is pennies, yet at retail they're sold at markups that industry reports put in the thousands of percent, as high as roughly 5,000% in some cases. That's why a basic grooming tool has become less about utility and more about sustaining one of the most profitable pricing strategies in everyday retail. The key to this model is control. Major shaving brands design proprietary cartridge heads that only fit their specific handles, and patents protect those designs from competition. Once you purchase a branded handle, you're locked into buying that brand's cartridges at whatever price the company sets. With every redesign, the system reinforces itself. A slight change to the connection point or a tweak to the cartridge structure keeps customers tethered while blocking cheaper alternatives. The upgrades themselves are presented as breakthroughs: more blades, extra lubrication strips, flexible pivots. But for most shavers, these tweaks make little practical difference. What changes more significantly is the price tag. A few extra millimeters of plastic or a new branding slogan becomes justification for raising the cost per cartridge, keeping customers convinced they need the latest model when the shave feels almost identical to the last generation. Subscription services emerged claiming to disrupt this high markup by mailing blades directly to consumers. While the model sounded like liberation, many plans introduced new fees, optional premium tiers, and recurring billing that turned into their own profit engine. When you calculate cost per blade, these subscriptions often sit close to retail pricing, and in some cases higher once delivery charges are factored in. The sales pitch is friendlier, but the financial outcome is that different from standing in front of the glass case at the store. What really sustains this spending is normalization. Shaving is so habitual that many people don't tally how much they spend on cartridges in a year. They just treat it as a small, unavoidable hygiene bill. Over time, that invisible cost compounds into hundreds of dollars, quietly reinforcing the same cycle the brands set up decades ago. There are clear alternatives, though. Independent testing routinely shows that generic cartridges and off-brand refills perform almost on par with leading names, and buying in bulk online can cut costs to just pennies per shave. Safety razors with double-edged blades or even rechargeable electric shavers can save substantially in the long run without compromising a decent shave. Each option breaks the lock-in system and returns control back to the consumer. The routine cost of shaving may feel minor, but it's a case study in how small, repeated purchases drain far more money than most people realize. And this quiet drain doesn't stop in the bathroom. It's just as visible when you walk into your local cafe and look at the price on a single cup. Premium coffee chains. In 2025, premium coffee chains have turned the $7 latte into an ordinary expense for millions of people. Strip away the branding, though, and the basic ingredients, beans, milk, water, maybe a little sugar, cost only cents to make. The wide gap between cost and price isn't about the drink itself. What people are really buying is the atmosphere of the cafe, the polished logo on the cup, and the feeling that carrying it signals a certain lifestyle. Industry research repeatedly shows that the profit comes from branding and experience. not from the raw ingredients inside the cup. For many, that paper cup is less about caffeine and more about personal identity. Sitting in a coffee shop with a laptop, posting a photo online, or simply walking down the street with the logo visible has become part of the ritual. It implies productivity and sophistication, even if the drink inside is no different from one brewed at home. Customers return not just for convenience, but for the cultural meaning attached to the purchase. What feels like a small daily choice quickly becomes a repeating expense that adds up to a major line in the household budget. The pricing strategy doesn't stop at the drink itself. Chains know the real profit lies in customization and limited-time items. A splash of flavored syrup that costs a few cents to produce becomes another dollar on the bill. Seasonal beverages, holiday blends, or themed flavors are framed as special, yet they're often just minor twists on the same base recipe. By stacking these add-ons, that already high-priced latte edges closer to $10. The extra dollar here and there is where the margin grows, even though the raw material barely changes. Compare that with home brewing and the difference becomes clear. A single bag of beans for around $15 can yield 20 or more cups, often averaging less than $1 each. Even when you add milk, sweetener, or flavored creamers, it never approaches the daily cost of repeatedly buying from a cafe. A week of chain store drinks can equal the price of days' worth of groceries, and over a year, the total runs into the thousands. The economics are not subtle. They're just easy to overlook because the expense happens one cup at a time. The issue isn't that cafes exist, but that daily visits are treated as normal rather than occasional indulgence. When a habit disguises itself as necessity, it quietly drains far more than it should. By making home brewing the default and reframing coffee outings as a treat instead of a routine, you flip the balance back toward your own favor. That single shift not only saves money, but also reduces how much you contribute to one of the most polished profit machines still running today. And while the coffee industry thrives on branding and upsells, it's far from the only place where the perceived value looks nothing like the real cost. The same dynamic shows up when you shop for everyday electronics accessories, where a few dollars worth of material gets sold as if it were something precious. Overpriced electronics cables. Walk into a big box electronics store and ask for an HDMI cable, and chances are you'll be pointed toward one with a hefty price tag. Retailers frequently mark these cables up several times over their manufacturing cost, often suggesting that spending more guarantees better performance. The packaging leans heavily on claims about sharper pictures, richer color, or crisper sound. But at the end of the day, what you're buying is a basic wire, something that has the same job whether it costs $5 or $50. The draw for retailers isn't the technology itself, it's the profit margin. On televisions, computers, and game consoles, stores compete on price and make little money per sale. Accessories, however, are where margins soar. A single cable can generate more profit than the electronics it connects, so employees are trained to highlight premium models and emphasize their supposed advantages. That pressure works especially well on shoppers who have just spent hundreds on a high-end display and don't want to risk downgrading the experience with a cheaper cable. Technical jargon supports the upsell. Phrases like oxygen-free copper or 24-karat gold connectors are designed to sound like must-have features. In reality, for short HDMI runs in a living room setup, digital signals either work or they don't. There's no middle ground where picture quality gradually improves with a shinier connector. As long as the cable meets the proper HDMI specification, the performance will be identical whether you paid $7 or $70. For consumer setups, the expensive option brings no added benefit beyond a flashier package. This sales tactic succeeds because it creates doubt right at the critical moment. A customer who just committed to a four-figure television purchase doesn't want the screen to underperform because of saving $20 on the cable. That hesitation gets exploited into an easy upsell. Online retailers reveal the contrast more clearly. Certified HDMI cables that fully support 4K or even 8K resolutions are widely available for under $10. In many cases, the exact same cable is sold under different brand labels at dramatically different prices. There's a straightforward way to avoid the markup. Shop for certified cables from reputable online sellers or trusted low-cost retailers. Properly rated $7 cable will deliver the same picture and sound as the $81 in the display case, so long as it meets the HDMI specification for your devices. When in doubt, check the standard printed on the box, not the marketing buzzword. What your eyes and ears experience comes from the television and source device, not from the metal finish on a connector. The bigger issue here isn't just cables. It's the invisible drain of paying extra for things you don't need, simply because the sales system is built to make you feel unsure. And that exact same strategy quietly follows you home in another form: recurring charges that keep pulling from your account long after you've stopped paying attention. Subscription services you forgot about. In 2025, one of the easiest ways people lose money isn't from big-ticket purchases, but from subscriptions they've stopped using and barely remember ever signing up for. What feels like a harmless trickle, a few dollars for an app here, $10 for a streaming service there, quietly turns into hundreds of dollars a year lost to services you no longer need. These aren't luxuries people actively choose month after month. They're recurring charges that slip by unnoticed until they've drained more than you realize. The shift happened because nearly every industry now leans on the subscription model. It's no longer limited to entertainment. Phone apps quietly auto-renew, fitness programs continue billing long after a user stops logging in, and cloud storage plans chug along in the background regardless of whether anything is saved there. Once your card details are on file, you aren't a customer making decisions anymore. You're a constant revenue source until you deliberately cut the stream off. Companies aren't relying on convincing you to buy again. They're relying on your inattention. A large part of the problem comes from the design of subscription systems themselves. Free trials often flip into paid services unless you cancel beforehand, and the process for ending them is rarely straightforward. The Federal Trade Commission has highlighted how cancellation friction is deliberately built into many systems, dubbing them Roach Motel designs, easy to get into, hard to get out of. Instead of a simple unsubscribe button, you might have to navigate multiple menus, scroll through obscure settings, or even phone a customer service line. Each extra hurdle increases the chance you'll give up before finishing, which is precisely the goal. This confusion is amplified when people juggle multiple accounts across platforms. A $4 app here, $12 streaming bundle there. Individually they look small, but together they create real overlap and waste. Many households unknowingly carry redundant subscriptions, paying for 2 streaming services with the same shows or keeping cloud backups active when another device already provides free storage. Researchers studying household budgets point to subscription creep as a major cause of wasted spending. It's not dramatic in one moment, but it steadily erodes financial health month after month. To take control, it pays to adopt a routine. Once each month, review your bank and card statements line by line, flag every recurring charge, and decide whether the service still has value. For services on trial, set a calendar reminder on the day you sign up so you can cancel before billing begins. Payment tools like PrivacyCom also let you generate virtual cards with spending limits or expiration dates, so a trial can end automatically without requiring you to chase down hidden settings later on. Apps now exist that scan accounts for active subscriptions, giving you a clear list of what's running and letting you cancel directly, saving time and undoing the roadblocks companies put in the way. What these forgotten subscriptions prove is how easy it is to normalize invisible spending. A handful of unused services looks insignificant until it's stacked across a full year, when the cost rivals major bills. Eliminating even a few can free up money every single month, and that sense of control over recurring costs translates directly into keeping cash for yourself rather than for companies banking on your silence. And while recurring charges drain your account slowly, other expenses are designed to burn up your money far more visibly, sometimes literally, with little to no added benefit. Premium gas for regular cars. Pull up to the pump, and it's hard not to notice how the premium gas button shines a little brighter, sometimes even highlighted in metallic colors or positioned to look like the smarter choice. It's marketed as fuel that shows you care about your car, a performance upgrade with protection built in. But unless your owner's manual specifically requires high octane, what you're really doing is spending more without gaining anything measurable. For the vast majority of vehicles on the road, premium fuel provides no added horsepower, no extra protection, and no longer lifespan for the engine. What it will do is raise your fuel bill every time you fill up. Octane ratings carry a scientific but misleading aura. Many drivers assume that higher octane means higher quality, when in reality, it only refers to the fuel's resistance to a type of early combustion known as knocking. High compression or turbocharged engines are engineered for that resistance, and in those cases, premium fuel is necessary. But for most standard vehicles, regular unleaded does the job perfectly well. You can think of premium here as a luxury label slapped on an everyday utility. It sounds impressive, but it doesn't change the final performance. Despite this, gas stations heavily lean on the marketing. Pump labels are filled with phrases like keeps your engine cleaner or enhanced performance fuel. These work because no one wants to feel like they're shortchanging their car. The reality is different. Since the 1990s, all gasoline sold in the United States already includes detergent additives by law, specifically designed to keep engines clean. Studies repeatedly confirm that unless your engine specifically calls for high octane, you'll see no gains in acceleration, mileage, or engine life from premium fuel. The car simply runs as if you had used regular. So why are people still reaching for that shiny button? Much of it comes down to habit and assumption. Drivers think, if I'm taking care of my car, I should buy the best. But in this case, the so-called best is simply the most profitable for the station. The price difference of 50 cents to $1 per gallon quickly adds up. Depending on how much you drive and the spread between grades, skipping unnecessary premium could save you hundreds over the course of a year. Not scientifically guaranteed savings for everyone. But for those who pump weekly, the math stacks up fast. The best guideline isn't what the label says at the station, but what the manufacturer says about your engine. If the manual specifies premium, then it's not optional. You should use it. Otherwise, default to regular and know you're giving your car exactly what it was designed for. Premium fuel only makes sense when an engine requires it. For everyone else, it's a polished marketing pitch that inflates receipts without delivering return. And this isn't the only place where packaging and presentation make something ordinary look essential. The same strategy plays out in another highly profitable industry, one where the difference in cost isn't in performance at all, but simply in the label on the box. Brand name medications. Walk through any pharmacy aisle and you'll notice two very different presentations of the same medicine. On one side, glossy boxes with bold logos and catchy taglines. On the other, modest white bottles with plain labels that seem like a cut-rate version. The surprising truth is that inside they work the same. By federal law, generic medications must contain the same active ingredient in the same strength and must work in the same way as the equivalent brand name drug. Regulators require strict testing to confirm this before a generic can even reach store shelves. Despite that, consumers often pay much more for branded drugs even when a generic sits right beside it. The difference isn't in the chemical formula, it's in how the product is marketed and packaged. A generic pain reliever can cost a fraction of the brand name version while providing identical relief. Yet people still routinely spend more, convinced a familiar logo or recognized color scheme somehow delivers stronger or faster results. The actual difference is usually inactive ingredients, things like dye, pill shape, or filler, which don't alter how the medicine works in the body. Pharmaceutical companies invest heavily to reinforce this bias. After a brand drug's patent expires and generics become available, advertisements do the heavy lifting. Commercials are filled with reassuring phrases like trusted relief or doctor recommended. None of that changes the formula inside the pill, but it triggers trust and loyalty that make patients reach for the expensive box. Generic versions, sold at thin margins, can't afford nationwide campaigns. Instead, they rely on regulatory oversight, which ensures they meet the same quality, safety, and effectiveness standards. The psychology here is simple but effective. People equate branding with effectiveness. When standing at the counter, many instinctively choose the box they've seen advertised on TV rather than the plain bottle their pharmacist mentions. This behavior doesn't come from evidence, it comes from repetition and reassurance. It explains why so many patients still request the brand name drug, even though pharmacists can confirm there's no difference in how the active ingredient works. The costs add up quickly. Paying extra for brand names in routine medications, pain relievers, allergy tablets, acid reducers, means spending 2, 3, sometimes 4 times as much for the same therapeutic result. Over time, that repeated choice translates into hundreds of wasted dollars, money that could easily be kept simply by asking about a generic equivalent. The fix here is both simple and actionable. Before you buy, ask your pharmacist if a lower-cost generic is available. In almost every case, there will be one, and choosing it has no impact on your treatment other than lowering your bill. What your body responds to is the active ingredient, not the logo on the box. And that disconnect between price, performance, and packaging isn't unique to medication. It's the same playbook you'll run into in other retail categories, where sellers lean on shiny displays and technical buzzwords to convince shoppers ordinary items are worth paying a massive premium for. Luxury, HDMI, and audio cables. In home theater aisles, one of the most persistent upsells in 2025 is the so-called luxury HDMI and audio cable. They're displayed in glossy boxes with metallic trim, marketed as if the clarity of your movies or the detail in your music depends on spending more. The setup is simple. After investing in an expensive TV or sound system, you're nudged toward protecting that quality with a cable priced several times higher than the standard version. It sounds sensible in the moment, but the sales pitch rests more on psychology than on engineering. The gap in price can be huge. Retailers often list standard HDMI cables for a few dollars, while positioning premium branded versions at $50, $70, or even over $100. Shiny connectors and buzzwords like enhanced fidelity or ultra-clear signal give the impression that only the premium models are fit for serious equipment. To the buyer standing at the checkout, it's framed as the only rational choice after spending thousands on a television or audio system. Yet when researchers and consumer groups test these cables in real-world conditions, they consistently find the same result. Budget-certified models work just as well as expensive ones for normal home setups. The reason comes down to how digital signals function. An HDMI cable transmits binary data, long streams of zeros and ones. Either the signal completes correctly or it fails. Unlike an analog signal, there's no gradual upgrade in picture or sound quality based on material or plating. Copper, the standard conductor, already does the job effectively. Adding a gold layer may look premium, but it has no effect on the quality of the output in everyday consumer use. Independent tests confirm that once a cable meets HDMI certification, the picture and sound will be identical regardless of price. So why do stores keep pushing the luxury versions? The business model rewards it. Retailers earn slim margins on televisions and speakers, but much higher margins on accessories. A store might only break even on a new screen while profiting heavily from one overpriced cable sold alongside it. This incentive shapes training and language. Salespeople are encouraged to frame the cheaper cable as inadequate, creating just enough doubt that customers choose the premium version out of fear of compromising their purchase. The practical move is to ignore the packaging and buy certified standard cables from reliable low-markup sellers, especially online. A properly rated $10 cable delivers the same resolution and sound quality as one 10 times the cost. Look for the HDMI specification listed on the label, not the inflated language about maximum precision or studio-grade audio. What matters is that the cable matches the needs of your devices, not what's printed in bold type on the box. Accessories like these expose how inflated markups can hide inside everyday purchases. But they're not the only household item where the cost has little to do with the product itself. In another corner of consumer life, one essential liquid is sold for prices so extreme that ounce for ounce, it costs more than fine champagne. Printer ink cartridges. Printer ink cartridges remain one of the clearest examples of how everyday products can be priced far beyond their actual value. The printers themselves are often sold cheaply, sometimes for less than the cost of a night out, but what looks like a bargain quickly reveals its catch. Manufacturers make their profits not on the printer, but on the steady flow of ink you'll need to buy afterward. Ink is widely recognized as one of the most expensive liquids by volume, and the markup doesn't come from the liquid inside so much as from the system designed to keep you buying it. By 2025, that system has only tightened. Many cartridges now come with microchips or digital rights management that prevent cheaper third-party cartridges from working. If you attempt to install an off-brand replacement, your printer may flash an error or simply refuse to print until you purchase the official version. This practice, often described as lock-in, ensures that the manufacturer maintains control of the pricing, even when producing the ink itself is inexpensive. Restrictions like these force consumers into paying inflated costs again and again. On top of cartridge lockouts, subscription plans have become another way to turn printing into a permanent expense. These programs automatically send new cartridges when the system detects low ink. At first glance, it looks like a convenience, no more last-minute trips to the store. But most people don't print enough to justify monthly deliveries. Cartridges arrive whether or not there's a need, and households often end up throwing out dried or expired ink. The subscription ensures revenue flows steadily to the company, while the customer absorbs a cost that could outweigh their actual usage. What ties these tactics together is a simple shift in how the industry frames printing. Instead of paying once for a tool and replacing the ink when required, consumers are pushed into a model that feels like renting the ability to use their own machine. The low upfront cost of the hardware pulls people in, while the long-term expenses accumulate with every cartridge, every automatic shipment, and every warning that blocks non-approved brands. It mirrors the razor and blades strategy: cheap handle, expensive refills, but with more barriers keeping you from stepping outside the system. Still, there are practical ways to reduce the expense. Refill kits can extend the life of the original cartridge at a fraction of the price, although they may require more effort. Printers designed with refillable tanks cost more upfront, but dramatically lower the price per page over their lifespan. For those who print infrequently, it may even be smarter to use shared resources, like printing at work, school, or local libraries, rather than keeping a home machine stocked with expensive ink. The model shows how ordinary tasks can be engineered into recurring costs, creating an ongoing drain from something as basic as printing a page. And once you see how engineered convenience shapes the price of ink, it becomes easier to spot the same pattern in other parts of everyday life, especially with items in the grocery store that look like time savers but quietly inflate the bill. Pre-cut produce and convenience foods. Walk into a grocery store today and you'll spot two versions of the same item sitting side by side. A whole pineapple sells for just a few dollars, while a plastic container filled with pre-cut pineapple chunks often costs several times more. The difference isn't in the fruit, it's the packaging and the labor of someone spending a few minutes slicing it before it reaches the shelf. That small step is enough to justify a price tag that quietly transfers extra cost onto the shopper. The pattern extends far beyond pineapple. Carrots, peppers, bagged lettuce, even something as simple as peeled garlic are all sold in pre-prepped forms at a cost far higher than their raw equivalents. Industry data shows that pre-cut produce commonly costs multiple times the per-ounce price of whole items. To most shoppers, though, this feels ordinary. The neat packaging signals modern convenience, as if slicing food at home is somehow outdated. But what you're really paying is a convenience surcharge. A few dollars shaved from your pocket in exchange for minutes shaved off your prep time. The appeal of these items is easy to understand. When pressed for time, cutting a melon or dicing onions feels like a task better outsourced. Stores capitalize on that mindset by presenting ready-to-use trays as efficient, lifestyle-friendly solutions. Add grocery delivery apps into the mix and the markup climbs even higher. By the time pre-cut fruit moves from a warehouse to your doorstep, service fees and inflated base prices can make a single cup of melon cost more than a dessert at a restaurant. Convenience here isn't cheap. It's one of the most expensive ways to bring ordinary produce into your kitchen. Beyond the sticker price, there's another hidden cost: waste. Whole fruits and vegetables typically last much longer when stored properly, while pre-cut versions spoil quickly once they're exposed to air. That means shoppers are not only paying more upfront, but also more likely to throw some away if they don't eat it within a couple of days. What looks like saved time often becomes wasted money in the form of spoiled food. Choosing whole produce keeps cash in your pocket and reduces how much ends up in the trash. That doesn't mean pre-cut should always be avoided. In certain situations, like rushing to an event or managing a genuine emergency, grabbing a container of cut produce can make sense. The problem arises when it becomes a routine purchase rather than an occasional fallback. For regular shopping, buying whole items, preparing them at home, and storing them correctly will save money and stretch your grocery budget much further. The broader lesson is that efficiency often comes packaged with invisible markups. The moment a product is marketed as a time saver, chances are you're paying extra for a shortcut you could have managed yourself. And while produce markups hit in small amounts, there are other areas where the penalty for wanting flexibility can be far steeper, turning into contracts that lock you in and charge you heavily just for trying to leave. Wireless cancellation fees. Thinking about switching your phone carrier in 2025? For many people, that decision still isn't simple. A lot of wireless plans continue to include penalties for leaving early, often hidden inside contract terms. These charges are framed as safeguards for the company's investment, but in practice, they function as one of the most effective lock-in tools in the modern consumer market. You don't just pay for the service, you also pay for the right to stop using it. The way contracts are structured makes this outcome almost inevitable. Carriers lure customers in with discounts on the latest phones or an attractive monthly deal. What sits in the fine print is the obligation. Leave before the term is over, and you're responsible for either an early termination fee or the remainder of your device financing. The result is that canceling halfway through a contract can cost nearly as much as keeping it until it naturally ends. That design discourages switching, even when cheaper or better service options are available elsewhere. The pitfalls grow steeper when device financing is bundled. A phone that seemed free upfront is rarely free at all. It's tied to a months-long payment schedule. Cancel early, and the entire remaining balance comes due immediately, often along with a termination fee for the service itself. It's not uncommon for that total to equal or exceed the price of the handset on its own. What felt like a good deal during sign-up can turn into financial handcuffs once circumstances change. For customers, the frustration is obvious. If coverage is poor, billing errors keep piling up, or another carrier offers a better package, leaving should be straightforward. Instead, the contract erects a barrier that feels less like a small penalty and more like a ransom demanded for the freedom to walk away. Industry critics point out that this keeps customers in place without requiring carriers to meaningfully improve service. Loyalty, in this case, is manufactured by cost rather than earned through quality. There has been some movement against the worst of these practices. In certain regions, regulators have capped the size of cancellation fees or forced carriers to disclose them more clearly. But consumer advocates emphasize the preventative route. Don't sign contracts that put you in this position in the first place. Prepaid and no-contract wireless providers continue to offer greater flexibility, letting you pay month to month and cancel at will. Some even separate device financing from service entirely. So leaving a carrier doesn't automatically trigger a massive bill. The most practical step is choosing flexibility up front. If keeping options open matters to you, stick to providers with month-to-month plans or buy your phone outright so your device isn't tied to your service. That way, the decision to stay or leave remains in your hands rather than bound by a contract. And while wireless contracts use fees to discourage change, there's another area of spending where the trap is more subtle, where people hand over money not because they're locked in, but because they're quietly buying into a dream that almost never arrives. Lottery tickets! Lottery tickets in 2025 continue to thrive as one of the most common everyday purchases built more on emotion than on math. For a couple of dollars, buyers get not just a piece of paper, but a fleeting sense of possibility, an imagined escape from bills, obligations, or routine. The statistical reality, however, shows something much less generous. The odds of winning are so low that experts often describe lotteries as a form of entertainment disguised as opportunity. The jackpot payoff is positioned as life-changing, but for most participants, the value lies only in the brief daydream. Advertising reinforces that feeling. Bright billboards, glowing TV spots, and cheerful winners frame the lottery as exciting and aspirational. Taglines like "someone has to win" are repeated often, not to remind players of the odds, but to normalize participation. The product being sold isn't wealth, but the mood of anticipation, the thrill of scratching off numbers or hearing them called. Even when people know logically that the chances are minimal, that small surge of hope is powerful enough to override statistics. Small wins play a critical role in keeping players engaged. A quick $10 payout from a scratch-off or a minor number match easily becomes extra fuel for more tickets. Instead of taking home the gain, many reinvest immediately, convinced that the next draw might be different. This cycle is intentional. Lotteries are designed to return just enough small prizes to keep the game feeling rewarding, while ensuring the net result stays negative for the vast majority of players. Over time, this pattern turns regular participation into a steady drain on personal finances. The financial impact is often hidden by how buying happens. A few scratch-offs added to a convenience store purchase or one extra ticket at the gas pump feels trivial, yet those spare change moments compound. Someone spending $10 a week without noticing could be dropping more than $500 in a year, money that never actually improves financial stability. What looks like a cheap thrill, stretched out over months and years, grows into a substantial expense that crowds out better uses of cash. Governments play a complicated role in this cycle. Lotteries are presented as voluntary fun, but they also generate billions of dollars in revenue that states rely on to fund public programs. That creates an unavoidable conflict. While individuals may lose, the system as a whole guarantees profit for the state. The structure ensures that even when jackpots are awarded, the government, always comes out ahead. The most practical takeaway is to reframe how you view lottery tickets. They aren't investments or survival strategies, they're entertainment. If you choose to play, set a small budget for it, just as you would for a movie ticket or a snack, and expect nothing in return. By capping spending and treating it as a form of recreation, you can enjoy the brief excitement without letting it eat into your long-term finances. And this tension between perception and reality, spending for promised results that aren't actually delivered, doesn't just apply to games of chance. It's equally present in everyday purchases, especially in the pharmacy aisle, where familiar names and packaging often convince shoppers to pay extra for products that perform no differently than their low-cost counterparts. Branded painkillers. Walk down the pain relief aisle in any pharmacy, and you'll find shelves stacked with colorful branded boxes promising fast, powerful relief. Right beside them sit generic bottles in simpler packaging that don't stand out nearly as much. Many shoppers instinctively reach for the brand name product, assuming it must be safer or stronger. In reality, those pills work in exactly the same way, but the brand nearly always costs significantly more, with no added medical advantage. One of the clearest examples comes with extra-strength painkillers. The large print on branded packaging suggests a superior formula, but a glance at the fine print usually shows the same active ingredient in the same dosage as the generic version inches away on the shelf. Decades of marketing campaigns have built a trust in logos and slogans that make consumers feel reassured, even though the chemical reality doesn't support the higher price. The active ingredient doesn't change just because the branding looks familiar. Here's the key point. Regulators require generics to match active ingredients, dosage, and performance before they can be sold. The pills undergo strict testing to confirm they deliver the same results as their branded equivalents. What this means is simple. You'll recover from your headache, muscle ache, or back pain just as quickly with the generic as you would with the branded option. Your body can't tell the difference between a pill that comes in a shiny blue box and one that comes in a plain white bottle. Only your wallet can. Marketing fills the gap between perception and reality. Ads often highlight claims like trusted relief for decades or recommended by professionals, cultivating loyalty without changing what's inside the pill. It can also create a subtle placebo effect. Because the packaging looks more impressive, some consumers feel like the medicine works faster. But this is a psychological boost, not a physical advantage. The science remains clear. Generic painkillers offer the same relief. Families that stick to name brands simply hand over more money year after year, often for no tangible benefit. The difference in spending adds up quietly. A few dollars here and there on common pain relievers seems small in the moment, but across an entire year, households that stick to branded products can end up spending hundreds more than those who choose generics. Pharmacy reports confirm the savings potential. Swapping brand-name painkillers for generics across everyday purchases provides meaningful financial relief over time without any loss in effectiveness. The way to avoid this hidden expense is straightforward. Compare the labels closely, and when in doubt, ask your pharmacist to confirm if a generic version matches the brand-name drug. In most cases, they'll tell you the active ingredients are identical. The only differences come down to inactive fillers, dyes, or pill shapes, none of which change how the medicine works. For the same recovery, the smarter option is the lower-priced bottle every time. At its core, this is about recognizing when you're paying for packaging instead of performance. Once you see that logos and shiny boxes don't improve your health, the choice becomes obvious. And this same tension, where perception outweighs actual value, shows up again in a very different setting, one that tempts people with sheer abundance and the promise of more than they could ever reasonably consume. all-you-can-eat buffets. At first glance, an all-you-can-eat buffet looks like unbeatable value. One fixed price promises endless choices lined up in trays, giving the impression that no matter how much you take, you're getting ahead. The format is built on a powerful psychology. People believe the more they pile onto their plate, the more they're stretching their dollar. Restaurants depend on this instinct, knowing full well that the average diner won't eat nearly enough to outweigh the cost. The real profit comes from that mismatch. Buyers convinced they're winning, while the numbers quietly favor the house. Behind the trays, the economics are straightforward. Buffets showcase abundance, but the ingredients that go into those pans are often chosen for price, not quality. Food is cooked in bulk, designed to hold up under warming lamps for hours, with seasonings and cuts that keep costs down. A piece of fried chicken may look plentiful when stacked high, but the restaurant hasn't invested in premium cuts, it has invested in volume. Diners think they're walking away with more for less, when what they're actually getting is quantity masking lower freshness. Behavioral research backs this up. Studies tracking dining patterns show that people consistently eat more food at buffet formats compared to ordered meals. The driving force isn't hunger, it's perceived value. The flat entrance fee shifts the mindset. Every extra scoop feels like a return on your investment, encouraging overeating far past comfort. Restaurants understand this trade-off. The more restrained you are, the greater their profit margin. The more you chase getting your money's worth, the more the personal cost shifts to your health and comfort instead of your wallet. Another consequence is waste. Buffets keep trays filled for appearances, so leftover pans are discarded at closing. Diners themselves add to the problem by loading plates they can't finish. The result is a dining format that magnifies inefficiency, with excess food thrown away and money spent on meals no one truly benefited from. Overeating and discarding both serve the same business model, ensuring the promised abundance works in favor of the restaurant, not the customer. A smarter choice is often the simplest. Spend the same $20 at a sit-down restaurant and you're likely to get a single dish made with fresher ingredients, prepared with care, and portioned reasonably. Even splitting a couple of entrees with a friend delivers variety without the excess. The shift in approach changes the value. A satisfying meal you finish completely, instead of calories consumed just to justify an entry fee. Buffets succeed because they blur the line between value and excess, wrapping lower quality in the illusion of limitless choice. Once you spot how that illusion works, the smarter path becomes clear. Skip the trays and pay for food prepared to be enjoyed, not endured. And this blend of habit, perception, and carefully framed upgrades shows up in another everyday setting too. One where people routinely pay extra for something that adds no real benefit to what they already had. Premium gas. Yes, I said premium gas. At gas stations across the country, the premium button is still one of the most effective upsells in 2025. Bold colors, strategic placement, and suggestive words make it look like the superior choice, something you should splurge on if you care about your car. The perception is simple. Premium must mean stronger, cleaner, and better. But unless your vehicle is built with a high-compression engine or specifically designed to use high-octane fuel, all you're really buying is a higher price at the pump with zero change in performance. Consumer research keeps reaching the same conclusion. Most cars on the road today are engineered to run on regular unleaded fuel. That's the baseline standard automakers use when designing vehicles. High-octane gasoline only matters for specialized engines, like those in certain sports cars, luxury sedans, or turbocharged models with higher compression ratios. For everyday sedans, SUVs, and pickups, premium provides no measurable gains in acceleration, mileage, or engine protection. The performance is the same, but the bill is noticeably higher. The marketing around premium fuel blurs these facts. Stations decorate pumps with language like maximum power, advanced cleaning, or engine protection, implying that regular unleaded is somehow incomplete. The truth is that government regulations already require all grades of fuel to include detergent additives that keep engines clean. That applies equally to regular and premium. The suggestion that one grade has extra protection is more psychological than mechanical. Drivers see the premium branding, assume it's superior, and pay more for the same function. One of the reasons this myth refuses to die is fear. Drivers think, if I can afford premium, maybe I should, just in case. No one wants to risk harming a car worth tens of thousands of dollars, but the real harm isn't mechanical, it's financial. In 2025, the gap between regular and premium often exceeds $1 per gallon. For someone filling a 15-gallon tank once a week, choosing premium without needing it translates into hundreds of wasted dollars over the course of a year. That money doesn't protect your vehicle, it only protects the profit margin of the gas station. The solution is as straightforward as it gets. Follow your owner's manual. If your manufacturer specifies premium, then use it. If it doesn't, choose regular and know your car is running exactly as it was designed to. Here's a simple challenge. Check your manual now. Seriously, pause for a second and do it. That 2-minute step is one of the easiest ways you can start saving money every single month. Premium isn't premium for your car unless it's required. For most drivers, it's just a slickly marketed upgrade that delivers nothing in return. What this example shows is how presentation can make an ordinary product look like a luxury essential, leading people to pay far more than necessary. And that same strategy appears in yet another setting, one where, instead of fuel, travelers get tempted right inside their own hotel room. Hotel mini bars! Step into a hotel room after a long day of travel, and one of the first things you'll notice is the minibar. Inside are sodas, candy, and small bottles of water, ordinary items sold at extraordinary prices. An $8 drink in the room might cost less than $2 at a corner store, yet in this setting it's presented as part of the hotel's experience. The product hasn't changed at all. What you're really paying for is availability at the precise moment you're too tired to go elsewhere. Hotels rely on that exhaustion. Guests arriving late at night often don't want to search for a convenience store or leave the property again. With snacks sitting just steps away, the temptation is immediate. The higher price gets rationalized as fair because of timing, not because the item itself is worth more. This kind of captive pricing works precisely because it feels easy to excuse. It's just one soda or just one chocolate bar. But over the course of a trip, those casual choices compound into a noticeable addition to the bill. Many modern hotels have taken the system further with built-in sensors. Some minibar fridges now register a charge the moment an item is lifted or displaced, even if it isn't consumed. Guests only notice the charge at checkout, often leading to disputes at the front desk. By removing the step of actually deciding to buy, hotels tip the scales. Once you've picked something up out of curiosity, the transaction may already be recorded. When pressed for justification, hotels frame minibar pricing as convenience, but the profit margins reveal the real motive. A candy bar that costs a couple of dollars in the outside world can be marked up several times over once placed behind minibar glass. The numbers put it among the steepest markups in the hospitality industry. The items themselves don't gain in quality. What changes is the environment. Inside a hotel room, they become high-priced indulgences that serve the hotel's bottom line rather than the guest's experience. It's easy to imagine these snacks as part of a luxury stay. After all, they're positioned next to expensive liquor and glassware. The packaging suggests exclusivity, when in truth, it's just standard retail stock in smaller portions. Hunger or late-night cravings create the perfect opportunity for an inflated charge, dressed up as part of the service. There's a simple way around the trap. Before checking in, pick up a few snacks and drinks from a nearby shop, or pack small non-perishable items in your bag. That one step cuts the minibar out of the equation entirely, giving you options without the exaggerated bill. How many times have you been surprised by your minibar charges at checkout? Drop your experience in the comments. I'm curious to see how common it really is. The dynamic here is clear. You're paying not for what the item is, but for where it's placed and how it's framed. And that same equation plays out in another familiar setting too, one where ordinary food is transformed into a high-priced treat the moment you step inside. Movie theater popcorn. Few purchases highlight hidden markups better than the popcorn sold at a movie theater. What looks like a fun tradition is actually one of the highest margin items you can buy in food service. In many theaters, a tub rings up at double-digit prices even though it's made of little more than kernels, oil, and salt, ingredients that cost only a fraction of that amount. The steep price isn't about popcorn itself, it's about how theaters survive. Theaters don't keep most of your ticket money. Studios keep the lion's share of ticket sales, which forces theaters to rely on concession stands to cover operating costs and turn a profit. Popcorn became the centerpiece because it ticks every box for the business model. It's cheap, fast to prepare in large batches, and has one of the highest markups in the building. Add to that candy and fountain drinks, items that cost very little to stock but sell for several dollars each, and concessions become the hidden engine of a theater's revenue. What looks like a casual splurge is in fact the reason theaters can keep the lights on. When you're buying a snack, you're also subsidizing everything from staff wages to projector upkeep. This model works because of psychology as much as economics. The smell of popcorn hits as soon as you walk through the doors, priming you to think that watching a movie isn't complete without it. Over the years, this has become ritual. Families and friends treat popcorn as part of the evening, almost like purchasing an extension of the ticket itself. That tradition softens the sting of a jaw-dropping markup. The exchange doesn't feel forced, it feels expected. In recent years, theaters have leaned harder into variations. Gourmet options, cheese-dusted, caramel-drizzled, or spiced blends are sold at even higher prices under the guise of premium. While the ingredients cost theaters next to nothing, the flavors justify further increases that customers accept as novelty or indulgence. The pattern is simple. Once you've agreed that popcorn belongs with movies, each additional twist commands a higher price. Ultimately, the cultural attachment to movie snacks masks the mechanics. You're not really paying for food. You're supporting a revenue structure made necessary by how ticket income is divided. Your $10 or $15 at the counter helps make up what your seat alone didn't. That's why concession prices feel outsized. They're not priced against ingredient costs, but against the financial gaps created elsewhere in the transaction. There are ways to avoid the trap without sacrificing the experience. Eating beforehand removes the pressure. Sharing a single item among friends reduces the cost. Bringing your own small snack is another option, though that depends on the theater's policy. Whatever the approach, the key is remembering that what seems like harmless fun is priced with strategy, not fairness, in mind. Concessions like these illustrate how everyday spending often hides invisible motives. What seems ordinary is designed to extract more than it gives in return, a theme that extends far beyond theaters once you look closely. The takeaway from all of this is straightforward. Most of these rip-offs survive because they rely on convenience and marketing, not actual value. Recognizing that gives you the upper hand. Here are 3 practical ways to protect yourself going forward. First, question the convenience charges, whether it's bottled water, travel-size items, or pre-cut produce. Second, check what protections you already have, like manufacturer warranties or credit card coverage, before buying any pricey add-on. Third, review your subscriptions each month so forgotten charges don't quietly drain your budget. And now it's your turn. What's the most ridiculous rip-off you've ever paid for? Share it in the comments.